Ning, Hungen, Mungadzuma Finu Inglise, Enau Hafa Hinasomu, Malaguhao, Umocho Klasi, Lotsamoru, Irasamu, do. All right, Hafa de todos Hamzugwena Hudzung, Hafa de. Hafa de. Este nuevo episode Fanatsu. This is another episode of Fanatsu. Hungen, I am joined here today by CHamoru filmmaker Brian Muña, who is fresh off
Hello.
a off winning best short documentary at the Hawaiian International Film Festival for his film CHamoru: A Lost Language. Ooh, Biba. And I'm very excited to have Brian here with me for this episode of Fanatsu Hungen. And uh, I'm hoping we're going to talk about a number of things today, including Brian's film, Brian, his work as a filmmaker. I'm going to allow Brian to nerd out as a filmmaker, talk about his, whatever he wants to, and and also he can also talk about some of the programs that he's been part of and working with recently because I got to travel to the Hawaiian International Film Festival recently and got to meet some great filmmakers. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to have some of those filmmakers on Fanatsu talking about some of their short films that they did through a program with Firelight Media, homegrown, beyond resiliency, and then the program, and they were brought together for the Hawaii International Film Festival with a homegrown series, apart from, which was the theme for that was sponsored, interestingly enough, by the Fanatsu podcast. And
Yeah.
so by the work that we do here. And so that's why I'm excited to bring on some of these filmmakers whose work is all about what it means to kind of be on the margins of the United States. And so we're recording this episode. We're live streaming while the United States is voting, you know,
Wow.
on their election day, deciding red, blue, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, or, you know, whatever decision gets made, those of us who live in the margins, we didn't get to vote. We
Yeah.
didn't get to participate. And so the Homegrown series features voices from Guam, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, but also Hawaii, because
Mhm.
Native Hawaiians have a complicated relationship to the United States because of the overthrow of their kingdom and the heavy militarization in their islands. And so what is the loss of culture, the loss of land, the loss of identity? How are the peoples in these islands trying to navigate sort of these connections to the United States, but also these ways that they are shut out from the United States? And so I'm excited that Brian is here with me uh for this first episode where we're talking to some of these filmmakers. Hafa day, Brian.
Half a day. I try to say as much words as I can in tomorrow.
Oh, Maulika, that's okay. That's okay. You're what's it called? You're here to talk about your film Chamorro, A Lost Language. And so, you're in a sense, the fact that we're speaking English to each other and the fact it's part of the power of your film, right? It's part of the power of your film. And so let's before we get into your films though, Cosinho, and introducing myself, can you go ahead and just introduce yourself?
Sure. Hopefully I do this right. Guahusi Brian Muña. That's the extent I have right now, Dr. Babako. I've been a filmmaker for on Island for I want to say over 10 years already. I've worked in a lot of commercials, narrative and documentary, and Chamorro Lost Language being my latest film. I love trying to support the filmmaking community on island however way possible. I think the best storytellers come from our islands. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be here. Um, yeah, I don't know if you want me to go into like my childhood and
No, or Sidus Masi, that's a good start. That's a good start. And so, before we get into some of the specifics of your film and this film in particular, Chamorro, Lost Language, I do want to give you, because one of the things that I love about what's happened more recently is I don't know if you felt this, but I felt this growing up. I felt that for there was a more of a push that for Chamorros we aren't as creative a people. Chamorros, like when I was growing up, it's kind of like Chamorros work for the government.
Mhm.
Chamorros join the military. Chamorros farm and fish, and
Yes.
that there's these tracks that Chamorros are on. And so if you said, I'm a Chamorro and I'm gonna be a comic book artist, maybe they call the priest to exorcise, the demon in you.
Yeah.
If you say, I'm a Chamorro and I'm gonna be a filmmaker, oh, maybe they call the archbishop to come over and spank you. Oh, wait, that was it. Never mind. They don't call the archbishop to spank you, dispense it. But so that was the Chamorro sense of Chamorro, culture that I grew up around is that Chamorros had tracks. These are the tracks that you fit into. And there were Chamorros who were artists. There were some Chamorro filmmakers, but it wasn't a common thing.
Mhm.
People weren't encouraged. And so I want to hear about what brought you to kind of to become to want to become a filmmaker
Yes.
because you and me, I think we're close in age. we're
Yes.
we're not yet mamco,
Yeah.
and so
Not
we
yet.
might be getting closer, but we're not yet manamko,
Yeah.
regardless of what our kids say. We're not yet manamko. And so what brought you to filmmaking? Kind of what is your journey to become a filmmaker? And then, did you were people supportive, or were people kind of did they find it interesting that you wanted to be a filmmaker? Or so what was your journey to want to become a filmmaker?
Yeah. First of all, like a lot of filmmakers, I think as a kid, I love watching movies. And this will, we'll touch up on this in the doc a little bit, but I watched a lot of American movies. I was fascinated by the idea that people's jobs were to tell stories and through imagination. And so that world has always been fascinating to me. I think it wasn't until maybe eighth grade I was like, you know what, I want to make films, but I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have anything of that luxury at the time. So I had to wait a couple of years, but I always knew that I just watch and study films. And by the time I got my first camera in my senior year of high school, I was just shooting um, as much footage as I could. Um, and because there wasn't really a filmmaking program, you talked about there wasn't really this filmmaking landscape. Google came out and that became my research tool to start learning. Okay, you had to do this with your camera and you have to learn about composition and you have to learn about there's this thing called directing and script writing. So I wasn't a writer. I wasn't even thinking about becoming a director. I just wanted to be the guy that held the camera to shoot the films. And I thought that was like a very like, it was a very glorious job because you were capturing all these beautiful images. Um, and then like you said, Dr. Bavaka, you touched up on it is I guess I was trying to figure out how do I make this film? Okay, now I have to be a director because we're on Guam, we're not there's a shortage of directors and script writers and actors and at least in the time I was starting. And so it became this thing where I was like, okay, now I got to learn script writing. So let me start writing. And I have to tell you, my first film that I wrote was really horrible. No one will ever see it, probably. Maybe in like, in the future. It was a film that was a drama, and it was something that when I watched it with my friends who helped me make it, because in Guam you have the support of your friends. um, and no budget. And so this was a very horrible film. It was a drama, and I was laughing the whole time like it was a comedy. And then it made me realize, okay, I don't have the skills to do this. Went through a little bit of like, side depression on it because I was like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Um, and then I got back into it. And then the first film I released with, Justin Baldovino at the time and Anton Ngata was Luther. And at that time, it was kind of like there was this beautiful kind of renaissance of filmmakers coming up because, I'm a Muña, but the Muña brothers, I'm a Muña brother, but not Don and Kel. But because they mix this up sometimes. They came out with Shiro's Head, and then after that, they helped streamline the festival, Guam International Film Festival, and that kind of, I think, helped people say, hey, you know what? There's a platform now to view these films, to get an audience. And so, of course, I started wanting to produce films just to get on that platform. Um, and I was doing it, for fun, not necessarily for pay or anything. And a lot of, even up until now, you make your own film on Guam, you're not getting paid for it. You're really doing it out of passion. And it's same with comic book, artists and just artists in general on island. We do a lot of things for free because we're very passionate. And so my journey in filmmaking really started out with the curiosity of how to make films. And then, you get absorbed into the art, and then you start thinking, well, like I could really do this. Guam International Film Festival gave me the confidence to start wanting to create my own work and even work on others' films. I didn't have to always be the director. I could be the cinematographer. I could be the script writer, and I could have a piece of my art in anyone's film, or whether it's mine or any other individual that I was working with. But the artistic community, I think, and even the evolution of DSLR uh, cameras at the time just made it possible. There was a lot more access to tools to filmmaking, and even more now. People could do it with their phones. So it's yeah, I like to say I was not born a filmmaker, but I decided to become a director out of necessity. I decided to become a script writer out of necessity, a cinematographer out of necessity, an editor out of necessity, even a colorist. Um, and then the rest is history. Now I'm just at the point in my life where I'm just trying to tell the stories I want to tell, and hopefully the audience can resonate with it.
Sidus Mase. Sidus Mase. Man, who has went on a movie Luther? I remember watching Luther. Yeah. No, I remember you're right that the Muña brothers helped to usher in, it helped to really usher in and make possible and inspire a bunch of others. But it was obvious that for so many people, a lot was percolating, like a
Hmm.
lot was kind of bubbling, like that we had been exposed to so much through media. We had read so much, we had watched so much, and we were inspired by so much, and we wanted to create. We were looking for our shot, but we don't live outside of Hollywood, California. We don't
Yeah.
live outside of New York City. And so, there's the chances to kind of represent, make a name for yourself. It's such a big cost. It's such a big commitment from Guam. And so it was always so difficult. Like even when you find out, like even when Manny Crisostomo was doing his like Manautau San Lago series about all these Chamorros who like are in the States and made it big, you get
Mhm.
that feeling like a lot of them like left island and made it big in these industries, but then a lot of them never came home after that
That's true. Yeah.
because there wasn't a lot of possibilities to advance here in your
Hmm.
field. So you got to go out there, but then you just kind of stay out there. You got that lifetime card at Costco and you don't want to give up that lifetime Costco card or man,
Yeah.
it's endless breadsticks at Olive Garden. I don't want to give up endless.
And
Well, we got Olive Garden on Guam now too. So
yeah.
anyways. But 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 so but I felt so inspired because I remember that time when I was just coming back from getting my PhD and the
Mhm.
Muña brothers, released Shiro's Head and it was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's
Yeah, we
do
can
it.
do it.
So see, even seeing Luther and then just because I remember, seeing that and just being like, yeah, why we should just like make movies. It doesn't matter if they're because I remember, but I also remember some of the criticisms that people
Hmm.
had because I remember people walking out of GIF sometimes, like even walking out of Shiro's Head. Sometimes they walk like people will walk out of it and say, "Oh, Pulp Fiction was better," or something like that. And it was just like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like it was still just this idea, like your your sense of a movie is judged by sort of this movie from the States,
They're
the
like
the
making
movie
comparison.
in the States. And so you're not, and I felt like that's held us back in so many ways. So that, you have the, if you're going to do something, it's got to be big, it has to be the best, it's got to be, and it's like, no, let's start off smaller, let's start off humbler, let's do something for ourselves, let's see where it goes. And so, yeah, no, I was, thank you for giving us that sense of your background and how you got started. It was yes, Sidus Masi. I wanted to, you had hold on, I wanted to actually share a picture here because you
Oh
we were
no.
talking about your upbringing here.
Yeah.
And so,
I get nervous about the photos, but there you go.
and so this is relevant though, of course, because your film Tomorrow, a Lost Language. And
Yes.
so, and for me, part of Fanachu as a podcast, part of it is that we want to make space for Chamorro's. Wait, hold on one second. We want to make space for Chamorro's, like, of all types,
Hmm.
like all identities. So like it's not because, like Fanachu is not for the most Chamorroist of the Chamorro who ever Chamorroed or something like
Yeah,
that. So and that's what's important, is that sometimes people feel like, I'm not strong in my identity. I can't speak Chamorro. It's like, hey, 8 out of 10 Chamorros in the world can't speak Chamorro.
it's a
So
lot.
that's okay. It means that's okay. That's okay. But the question though is, what are we going to do about it? And so I wanted to give you a chance to talk about kind of, your cultural identity.
Hmm.
What was your experience? Because when I watched your film, one of the things that you talk about is that you were in cultural dance.
Yes.
That's something, and this is a picture of you. And so I think a lot of people may not realize that, especially people who have met you through your work more recently. They may not know that about you. And so can you talk to us about how you got into cultural dance, and then just in general about like your journey, your
Yes.
cultural journey and your cultural identity?
Yeah. So, it was, I believe, high school around 2000, year 2000. I was a junior, and my little brother, his tomorrow teacher, I think, enrolled him in some cultural dancing initiative. And eventually I became the big brother that drove and took him to practice. And, of course, I'm going to sit down there and I'm going to watch the practice of the tomorrow dance in front of me. And then eventually, I don't know how I got into it, but I decided, you know what, let me do the drumming for this. So I started out as the drummer, and that's all I wanted to be because, I didn't want to, you see me in the picture, I'm practically half naked, in a sari. And then, that was like, I'm never gonna do that. I'm just gonna be the drummer with my clothes on. Um, that was my biggest contribution to what I was gonna do for the culture at the time. And then we were at Pleasure Island. The group was Paraisu, that I was in, and we were short guys. And so, they looked at me being one of the guys that matched the height of the other guy that needed a partner for the warrior battle. And I did not know the dance. I only knew the drumming. And they said, put the sadi on. It was my first time. And Pleasure Island is the Pleasure Island block party. So there's a lot of people. I'm a very introverted person by nature. So here I was in a study, with my E-Fit stick and my get up, and I'm just walking around trying to mimic the dance. My first performance was my largest performance, and and I didn't know the moves. I was moving in the wrong direction. I was um not, doing the warrior, we called it 8 builds at the time, the warrior dance the right way. But then for some reason after that, I just said, you know what? I think I want to do this. I don't know what in me inspired me to just continue practicing because maybe it was Part of it was I was embarrassed in the beginning, but I think I just got really immersed in the dance group and started attending the practices. I wasn't just dropping my brother, I was actually attending the practices. I was doing the chants, memorizing the songs. Um, and before you knew it, I was performing. We went as far as the 8th Festival Pacific Arts in New Caledonia. Um, and funny, I think it's actually coming up that they're going back to New Caledonia. So I think that's the next Festpac. And so I
Oh
was very
yeah.
fortunate to go there and then be immersed in seeing other Pacific Island cultures and speaking their languages. And then a part of me felt like, wow, like I really love that there's this rich culture of Pacific Islanders, and everyone's just here for one thing, and is to showcase who they are as a people. And so that was my journey to becoming a Chamorro cultural dancer. And then, unfortunately, after senior year, I start thinking about jobs and I start thinking about college. And then before you know it, I can't balance the two. So I make a choice to live the life that most people try to live, which is like the life of surviving and paying bills and all that. And so I put the culture to the back of me.
No, Sidus Masi. I think it's a common sort of experience, you know. I think many Chamorros feel like you have to choose one or the other,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's yeah. I and so let's talk more specifically now about actually before we I'm trying to think here if we should get into the film. It's actually let's talk about Firelight. Let's
Yes.
talk about the program itself before we get into the film.
Yeah.
And so you were part of a cohort, like an entire cohort of filmmakers
Yes.
from all sorts. You know, the program was Beyond Resiliency, right?
Hmm.
And so go ahead and talk to me about go ahead and talk to me about this program, Firelight Media Beyond Resiliency.
So Firelight Media actually did a call to just I saw it on Instagram or on social media, and a friend of mine actually I want to say it was a few days before the deadline of when the applications were due, sent it to me and said, hey, maybe you should think about this. And one of the things that I was actually thinking about for a long time was I wanted to do a film with the Chamorro language because it was something that was missing in my life. And then eventually, um, I decided, okay, Firelight Media is a producing entity. They were responsible for producing Homegrown. It's a series. There's season one should be up on PBS, I believe. And so this was a big thing. For me because I was actually applying to a program that would fund um, Pacific a Pacific Islander film. That was one of the criteria, and uh, and so just created a really quick pitch deck on this documentary about how our language is at risk of being lost, and if we do nothing, then it could be lost forever. And I remember sending it off, not thinking too much about it. And then I get a call from I get an email from the Firelight Media team saying, we'd like to schedule a pitch session with you. And so, it was a little nerve-wracking. I had probably like about, I want to say 3 or 4 people on that call. Um, did my pitch, talked about, how I grew up. Now, remember this documentary that I was pitching originally was a documentary about, and then this is where you came in because I put you on the pitch deck. I put Saina Ana Arceo from Chief Farrell Academy. And I said, you know what? These are the people that are going to talk about why our language is dying, and the documentary is going to be focused on these two because they have initiatives to revive the Chamorro language and why that's important. And in the middle of my pitch session, I'm talking about like how I grew up American, Americanized, and like how I didn't see importance in the language because I was, I was when you're growing up, you're a teenager and you're thinking like, I want all the Western things in the world. And for some reason, they said, okay, we'll get back to you. I got a second pitch session, and then the pitch session, the second time was, we want to support the film, but we think it should be about your journey. And me being the person that wants to be behind the camera and not in front of it was like, I really had to think about that because it's very personal. It's a very personal, kind of like a personal essay that they were asking for. And but Firelight, I think, when they talked about like if you could show people the struggle of what it means to be a part of and apart from, right? That was the theme of this series, was a part of and apart from. Because I was a part of America, like most of us were apart from it, but I was also in a very duality kind of way apart from being Chamorro as well. So I think the Firelight team, the producers felt that was intriguing. And then I think I saw you at Infusion. For most people that are tuning in that don't know what Infusion is, a coffee shop. So, good product placement, I guess, right now. Um, and I just said, hey, Dr. Bavakwa, can I get you to sign a commitment form? And I think I sent it to you and sign out on our SEO, and reached out to other folks to try to get on board. But in the in the whole Firelight media experience, the understanding was that they were really trying to focus on Pacific Islanders, most especially on the US territories, and what it meant to be a part of and apart from. And that was basically for what's going to be I want to say released in January, season 2 of Homegrown. And so we have the US Virgin Islands, like you mentioned, Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam. Uh, man, I hope I'm not forgetting any other. Puerto Rico. Uh, and so it was a culmination of, I believe, 8 filmmakers and their perspectives. Um, and just sort of the issues. And then when you see, and you were fortunate enough to see the series as a whole, Dr. Bavakwa, you see how connected we all are as Pacific Islanders and territories, and how we're all kind of going and struggling through the same thing. So I think it was a very cohesive um series. And also I want to mention that like Pick Pacific and PBS were very instrumental in also helping shape and guide this experience. During the making of the film, I was in constant meetings with our Firelight media team and Pick Pacific, Pacific Islanders and Communication, and PBS. And, we would get notes and just kind of like try to understand, how do we make my story, right? Because a lot of times when we're telling the stories of Guam, we think about everyone's going to understand the context of what we're talking about. But what the producers and the creative team and our consultants did really well with us was like, okay, I'm an outsider. Like, how do you make it so that I can relate? Because I don't know Guam and I don't understand what you mean when you say this or the context. And so a lot of that care was taken into going into the film because, I know I mentioned in the panel before, we make a lot of films on Guam and they die on Guam and they don't go past that. Maybe they make a festival run and then that's it. But for this one, I think um, they were really looking for impact um, as a whole, not just for our people, but for just people in general, because I think Chamorro Lost Language is a calling to what would happen if a culture lost its language. And and I know, uh, based on my research as well, is that by 20, I want to say in the next decade, we'll be losing thousands of languages. And, my saying and even the saying of one of the articles I came across from a linguist who visited Guam, he mentioned, and I forget the name, but he mentioned that when a language dies, so does its culture. And so in making this film, it also kind of pushed me to really challenge myself and really question, why was this so important to me? Why was this story brewing in the back of my mind? And why haven't I done anything earlier? You know? And so Firelight Media, uh, our producing team was just really amazing. They not only just said, here's the money to produce this film and make it happen, but they also provided us with the resources to make a really legit film. They took us through um, the process of making a film in the right way so that it doesn't get stopped somewhere along the distribution line and get pretty much canceled, right? Because there's a lot of legality behind films and documentaries. I realized there's a lot of care that needs to go into how you market to the public, and so yeah, just the tools. I had a story consultant, from another renowned Ben Alex, another director. I had Andres, who was my consulting editor from New York, and we had like a lot of strong conversations about the edit of the film. So they not only just produced the film, they actually gave us the resources uh, to really develop us as filmmakers so that after we make this film, we continue to be strong filmmakers, not only on the islands, but in the world and to present ourselves in the world stage.
Sidus Mase. No, thank you for sharing all that. I wanted to share a little bit about and para hamzo ni umeega para por favor engengwa question midzo. If you have any questions, or if you want to just share a biba. A few of you have sent some bibas, but I'm sure there's a few more bibas. Don't be mesquinunay. Don't be sata with your bibas. And so let's uh let's share some images actually from so the Hawaii International Film Festival this year, the 44th HIF. That's
Mhm.
where your film premiered along with a number of others, and this was as part of the Beyond Resiliency, but also the Homegrown series in particular that you were talking about, that was made possible by Firelight and PIC. And so this is part of the Q&A after the all of the documentary shorts, you know, premiered. And yeah, it was pretty cool just because, as somebody who, you know, I felt so honored to be invited out there. First of all, just to host a panel
Mhm.
with some of the directors on it.
So glad you were the panelist because I was even more nervous when I was asked to be the panel. And then to find out you were going to be a part of it, I was like, oh, awesome. Okay.
But somebody asked me sort of why was it that I was brought out? And I was a little bit confused, but then I thought about it and I said, well, when you think about it, the there's all of these territories from the United States, and it's very rare that anybody brings them together to
Mhm.
be in conversation with each other or to bring their issues together because they're spread out in different oceans. They have very different contexts. Usually people bring them together and just say, hey, let's make them all, let's do this to them. And they treat them all like they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
And they don't ever listen to them. They just kind of say, we should just do this to them. And so Fanachu is one of like the few places where I try to bring people from like every territory connected to the United States to come and talk and share. So there's episodes from American Samoa. We had one just last month, and then we're going to have another one. One of the other directors from Homegrown is going to join for another episode to talk about his film later this month.
Awesome.
We have people from the U.S. Virgin Islands that come to talk about issues there. We have people from Puerto Rico and so on. And so, but that's what was so cool about seeing all of these films together
Yeah.
was it was from, and one of the great things too is that a lot of it was very on the ground in
Mhm.
the islands too. it wasn't somebody just flying in for a few days to make a film, because that's what happens when journalists do it. Like
Yeah,
CNN comes in to Guam, and then they go and have lunch at Mezcla, and then they talk to three people, and then they leave.
yeah. I think
And
to
then
add,
go ahead.
just to note, Firelight was very, adamant in a good way, right? That the production team, even the key roles in the production team, not just the subjects, but the key roles of the production team were local, and as much as possible, Chamorro, right? Because this is a film about Chamorros, and so even when it came to like trying to staff the positions for making this film, it was like, can you make it as much as possible local because you want to support the community that you're talking about. And so I thought that was really amazing that they weren't saying, hey, fly in this DP from LA or anything like that. It was, hey, please make sure that your key positions have as much of a Chamorro presence as, the film you're talking about and or the subject. And so I thought that was really amazing on the team.
Oh, Biba, Biba. And so let me okay, so let's actually look at a few more. Let's look at a few more of these pictures here, and then I want to talk more about the film itself. And so actually, let's talk about this one. Hadzi Esti. Hadzi Esti Bonita na Palawan.
So my wife Marissa, she was my producer in the film as well. And I think she did an amazing job uh helping me, especially the fact that we were able to be in close proximity to make sure that everything that was needed to help move the film and make it smooth was there. And I could always trust in her to also be honest about certain things regarding the film. So, but yes, my wife and we have two amazing boys, uh, and so yeah, we were fortunate that she was able to make it out and be a part of the festival. She's a really big part of the film, and so yeah, I can't say enough about her and how much. I mean, when you're working with a director, sometimes you're putting up with a lot of things too. So so patience and communication is very important, and I think it really helped. I think there was some concern, that we were a married couple and maybe it was too close to the source material, but I think in a way it kind of helped that we had this relationship because she also could understand my struggles and she was there for a significant part of my life to understand the things that I was going through as a Chamorro male. Yeah.
Biba, Biba. And then Umasuda Hamzud and si Leona, you and Leona met too. You
So
had
there,
worked
yeah,
together.
I was so happy to see her. I totally forgot she was in Hawaii. And when I saw her, it was beautiful because we actually worked on her documentary years back. I want to say even like maybe a little after Luther, and it was Mothering Guahan. It was about mothers in Guam and just kind of like their perspectives and how it shapes us as individuals, and so it was a nice reunion for the two of us to finally be in the same space again.
Oh, Biba. So let's talk now specifically about Chamorro, a lost language. And so
Yeah.
we've shared a little bit about its content. And so you've talked a little bit about the how, it got its focus through talking to Firelight and how they helped you sort of develop the narrative and how it should be focused. And so And so, sort of tell us about the focus here, because even just looking at some of the stills from it, it's fascinating to see sort of this image of you when you were young and you were in cultural dance to
And this is the
then
next
to
generation.
then hungen, nuevo na generacion, and then also then you. And so talk to us about the film. Sort of what can people expect in terms of the film?
So the film in a way it's almost like a personal essay, I want to say, about just my journey and my struggle as an individual on island on Guam, being a young Chamorro now, and maybe how, in the beginning of my life, I wasn't really understanding what Chamorro meant. And I talked about this in the panel. It's not my parents or my grandparents' fault, but it's mainly just the way I grew up on island was, America was the best thing. And so my childhood was very, very westernized. And so, when you finally start taking Chamorro class, you become the kid that's complaining about Chamorro because it's hard because you have to learn a language at a late age. And so my perspective on Chamorro at the time was one, I didn't see and it's gonna sound, but I'm being honest, I didn't see the value in it when I was growing up because I was like many probably, um, what am I gonna do with this? And then as I got older, I started realizing, especially when I had my two boys, maybe even my first child, like, what am I actually leaving behind? I used to be very in touch with the culture when I was a cultural dancer. And then you get older, you start having this existential crisis maybe in your life. And you start thinking about like, what am I going to leave behind? I could leave behind a lot of these materialistic things in my life, but then for my children, their identity would be a mystery. And their culture would be a mystery because I wasn't doing enough as a Chamorro. And I know you kind of mentioned it, like maybe we don't feel Chamorro enough. Um, but now the stakes are higher because I have two boys and I don't want them going through life or uh being really separated from their culture. But a big part of it too, I'm trying not to spoil the film too much, but the big part of it too was my disconnect with my grandmother, who is one of the last speakers in my family. And I think you said it best, Dr. Bavako, in one of our interviews. It didn't make the cut, but you mentioned that we may never speak Chamorro the same because the generations before us, even down to pronunciation or just context, the language has been so diminished and but the most important thing was to try to preserve the language. And for me, it was initially a mission to just bring light to, hey, there is a problem. We are losing the language. And then eventually, even during the filmmaking process, in talking to you and Sana Ana, I started to gain the confidence to feel like, you know what, I could do this. Because I think a lot of the reasons why I stopped myself, and maybe many others have stopped themselves from speaking the language or learning the language, was because of shame and guilt and just feeling like, I'm going to be ridiculed if I say the wrong word, um, or I pronounce it the wrong way. But I really love that in meeting both of you, um, and having strong conversations about where the language is going and what we need to do. It was really about perpetuation. It was really about starting and learning and doing your best. And sometimes the best is what we have. And, like I mentioned in the panel in Hawaii, I wasn't trying to save the world, but at least I could start with my family and then they be carriers of the language. And maybe I could see the smile on my grandmother's face when I could actually go in there and say a complete sentence to her and, she's taken aback.
Oh, Biba, again. I think that's a good way of seeing it. Adumididi, little by little.
Yeah.
The small. This is a still that you chose to kind of represent the film, and so I thought you might want to kind of explain it a little bit more because I think you were referring to it a little bit there.
Yeah. So, the the um the Texan caves is where this is taken. These are actually ancient Chamorro paintings in the caves, and one of the paintings on there was a handprint which so happened to be about the size of my son's hand. And so, you know, when you're filming the documentary, you're not like really staging anything. You're kind of just going through the moment. And one of the most important things for me was I always knew that I wanted Letexan to be the place where I try to reconnect with my ancestors. And I feel like the saying is that a lot of Chamorros go back to Letexan to really establish a connection to their ancestors, um, because it's one of the, you know, the most congregated, at least known places on island, with still remnants of our ancient Chamorros. So it was important for me to bring my son there and also establish the connection because it's a generational thing. And so putting his hand up to that, the handprint was almost like a mirror from past to present, and maybe a little symbolic to what are we going to do together, father and son, to communicate in the way our ancestors did. And so I just felt that that location for me, you know, was really hard to get. There's it's you know it's a reserve, and so even filming in there and lighting it is very sensitive. So we had a lot of red tape we had to get through, but the staff there was very supportive, especially understanding what the film was about. And it was one of those things where I was like, you know, it's going to be in the film or we're not making the film, basically, because I knew that when I walked in there for the first time, when I was doing a location scout for it, and just previously years ago, hiking there, you do get a sense of like a feeling of connection. And I can't explain it. I feel like if you're Chamorro and you're trying to reconnect, visit the Texan and take a walk and see the lachi stones and the pottery that's littered on the ground, and especially like when you're looking at the caves, for me, I feel like you're reading a story that someone left for you, you know, thousands of years ago. And so this is one of my favorite scenes and days of shooting because of the fact that it was a father and son um reconnecting together. You know, my journey is not just for me, it's for my children.
Mm.
And so, um, yeah.
Mm. Bonito. No, go bonito now. And it's appropriate, you know, I love what you shared there. And, one reason why it makes sense too is because what is a language but something that we have passed down from so many generations?
Hmm.
And then, and whenever people tell me, oh, the Chamorro language is dying because it's useless, or the language is dying because of this or that, I say, no, 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 no. Languages don't die because of this or that. The only reason a language dies is because people stopped passing it from one generation to the next. And so sometimes those issues of you can't get a job with it, or you can't make money off of it, or something like that can affect the choices that you make. But at the end of the day, you choose the language you're going to use with your kids. You choose if you're going to support them as they learn their native language or not.
Hmm.
And so that's where we're at now, is that the Chamorro language was passed down for thousands of years across a lot of calamities and catastrophes that we know of, and across a lot of calamities and catastrophes that we don't know about because they were thousands of years before we know what happened to our people.
Yeah.
But the language was still there, and it was still passed on. And it is sad, though, that the language might not be passed on anymore.
Hmm.
And so, but that's why it's so important that we give it to the next generation now, because I get stressed just thinking that in the lives of my children, the Chamorro language, people might stop speaking it.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's not going to happen in my lifetime. Like, and it's probably not going to happen in my children's lifetime. There's going to be people who will still speak Chamorro, but it's is it going to still be a living language? That'll depend on the choices that we make, and we're going to have recordings of it so we can still listen to songs. We're going to have recordings. We can listen to the voices of our elders who spoke it.
Mhm.
But it's another issue if we're going to encourage people to keep using it like it's a regular part of their lives. And that's a separate issue. That's another issue.
Yeah. You know,
And so go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think for me, it was really the fact that I was able to have really good conversations with you and Asana Anna Arceo was just the fact that we know the atrocities of what happened and the issues that kind of stemmed or created the language being lost today. But and I don't say that like completely lost, but the fact that the both of you both had the perspective to say, but here's how we can move forward, you know. And one of the things that happened at Hawaii International Film Festival was there was an older woman in the back, and she stopped me, and I think you saw it, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble, because she said you, and she pointed at me, and then I stopped and to talk to her, and she is a Chamorro woman living in Hawaii, and she mentioned that she didn't realize that the language was endangered. And so, how do we know there's a problem if we don't bring light to the problem? And I think a lot of our people don't think that it's very easy to say, oh, other people will take care of the language. Dr. Bavakwa, Chief Hura Academy is going to take care of it. The Chamorro cultural dancers are going to take care of it. It's going to be perpetuated. It's not our business, not our problem. But the real thing for this film to represent is like, no, there is a problem and we have to address it. And it takes more than you and Saina Ana and the children of Farao and your children to save the language. Like we actually had to start speaking it in our homes. Don't leave it to the Chamorro teachers at the schools to do it, because the children see it as an academic thing, right? They get through the class, but they come home and it's not spoken by me, uh, and so you know I think one of the that experience with that woman talking to me was that, wow, I didn't realize there were people that didn't even know that we had this problem, this issue, and so the film hopefully brings light to that.
No, Hungyan, it's few Taekwondo. It's often like that because even for those in the, you know, I always tell people in the diaspora, that's where the language statistics are the lowest. In Guam, it's better than in the diaspora, but it's worse than in the CNMI. But in the
Yeah.
CNMI, it's the language statistics are worse now than they were a generation ago, and worse than they were 2 generations ago. So that's the thing is there's definitely language loss amongst the Chamorro people in general. And so if you're over a certain age, then you're likely to understand Chamorro for sure. But what we see now is that middle-aged people in Guam struggle to speak but understand a lot.
Mhm.
If you're middle-aged and older in the CNMI, chances are very good that you can speak fluently, no problem. If you are in your 20s in the CNMI, chances are okay. There's a fair chance you can speak, but there's also a very good chance that you can't speak Chamorro.
Yeah.
But you can understand more than what a Chamorro in Guam can understand, and more than what a Chamorro in Tallahassee, Florida can understand.
Yeah, that's
Chances
true.
are good. And so it's just, but that's why recognition that there's a problem, that there's a loss, and it's something that everyone is facing. We're all faced, but we're facing it in different ways, and we have different access to resources. So if you're in Rhoda, you've got lots more people who can speak Chamorro. So if you're a young person who wants to speak, you've got more people that you can access. If you are a Chamorro that's in Delaware, you might be struggling to find people to help you or resources. You can't go to Chief Harao Academy if you're in Delaware.
Yeah, that's true.
but so, but
But they could send
so,
your Zoom classes.
well, that's true. So that's why we need more stuff like that. We need more stuff like that. Now, I want to share because, oh, So one thing that was very exciting that came from the HIF is, of course, that Manganahau is that somebody won an award. Somebody's film won an award. Ooh la la, biba biba. And so Chamorro, A Lost Language won for Best Documentary Short. And so
Yeah.
I want to share real quick your acceptance speech from that you recorded.
Oh, I'm wearing the
And
same shirt. Oh my, wow. That's how I need a new wardrobe.
it's okay. It's your Zoom
I was thinking,
presentation.
I did that this morning.
And so and then I want to hear your thoughts, on winning this, because how exciting.
I'm extremely honored to be receiving this award for short film for Chamorro Lost Language. This is dedicated to the Chamorro people, our Pacific Islands, and U.S. territories. I especially want to thank my grandmother for being the true heart of why this film exists. To my producer and wife, Marissa, for helping me bring my vision to life. Thank you. To the Firelight team for not only giving me this opportunity to share my story, but encouraging me to make this film my journey, my personal journey to learning the language. To our media partners, Pick Pacific and PBS, and to all those who have had a hand in making this film, thank you, and we love you. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Bavakwa, Saina Ana Arceo, and the children of Chief Harao Academy, Saina Eileen, and Guma Irenchen Tautatanu, without whom this journey would not be possible. Lastly, to the homegrown Season 2 filmmakers that share their U.S. territory and perspectives. May we continue to share our stories and reach the rest of the world. Thank you all for providing a platform. Thank you to the Hawaii International Film Festival for making it possible for others to experience our perspectives and to share our stories. This film is only the beginning, as I now begin my journey to not only learn the language, but to create impact for generations to come. And this is a call to action for all those who are experiencing the loss of their indigenous tongue to step up and try your best to preserve the language, because without language, there is no culture. Thank you.
Biba, Biba. Okay, so talk to me about what you felt after hearing that you won. So this is, you're now eligible for Academy Awards, I hear.
Yes, so it's an Oscar qualifier. And so it's wow, I'm still in disbelief about it. I could tell you exactly how I found out I won. I was actually leaving Hawaii, and in the plane with Marissa and Chloe, Chloe, our executive producer and Firelight message, "Are you still on island? Because OMG, in the best words I can say, you won." And I was like, what? It was interesting. I was able to receive messages. I guess the Wi-Fi was working on the plane at that moment. And then she was saying, can you assign someone to get your award, and whether it be me or someone, and then write a quick speech. So I wrote a quick speech, and um yeah, I was just sitting in the plane, like in shock. It was, I like to say, it was a very intense competition. I read that it was about 2,000 submissions, about maybe a little over 140, 150 some officially selected short films, and then 23 nominated. And when I looked at everyone that was nominated, I was like, oh wow, this is really intense. And then just to find out on the plane, I didn't go to the awards gala because I was like, okay, I'm just, sometimes as artists, we just we just want to go and not feel the pressure of an awards ceremony. But yeah, I think this is going to open up opportunities, hopefully, to put Guam in the world stage and say, hey, there are two things. One, we have an issue with the language and we need to work on preserving it. And it just puts us in a platform, especially with PBS putting it on their main platform in January, to really showcase not only the island, but the issues that we have. and maybe some of the solutions, because we do talk about the solutions in the film. But also to say that you were talking about earlier, talented people leave the island, and and they never come back. But here we are, we made a film, and you're part of that journey, Dr. Babakwa. Yeah, we made this film, and now we might, we're an Oscar qualifying film. And the next best thing that I want to share was that we're also accepted into Doc NYC, and that's also another Oscar qualifying festival. So, I mean, you know, chances are, but the most important thing is that the film is getting distributed and seen by as much people as possible. And and I just want to say to like a lot of the artists out there, our local artists, that our voices are as strong as we want it to be. We just have to believe that we can actually do it. And yes, it takes a lot of putting in the work and the long hours, but Guam is, if you really look at it, Guam is like the heart of the world, I think. And I always said, I feel like the best storytellers are going to come from the islands because we're just so rich in history and the stories that were passed down. So this is I think it's amazing. I'm still in shock about it. I think I actually got the award just last night. Chloe, thank you if you're on this for mailing it to me. I didn't get to open it up just because it was really late, but I have it. I'll take a picture. I'll post it on social for everyone. But yeah, I'm still like, I don't know. I'm still
Biba. Oh, Sidus Masi. Now, we're just about out of time though, but we have a few different questions.
Yeah.
Um, one question from Bobby Benevente Hafade Senora is, what is your grandma's name? What family is she from?
Oh man. So she's Winifreda Azuzu.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
as far as like, but the Azuzu from where? You know, I guess I gotta talk to my grandma in Chamorro about that just to find out. But um, yeah. So Azuzu is her last name. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sidus Masi Senora. And she also says that she loves she loves what you said, um where was it? My journey is not just for me, it is for my children. She also shares that when she grew up in a family, she grew up in a family where Chamorro was spoken, but she was part of that generation that was discouraged from speaking the language. So she understands, but she struggles to speak it. And
Wow.
Senora
Thank you.
Leona Hofschneider, Tata Saipan, she says that, Naya animu, kudos and congrats, kulu para hago. And she also commenting on your wardrobe. She says she finds herself in her favorite wardrobe too.
Yeah. Thank you. Makes me feel better.
And so, Hungen, and then we have other people commenting, thank you for making this film. This is so cool. Congratulations on your success, Consigi Motna. Very proud of you and your accomplishments. Hungen, thank you everyone for tuning in and for watching. And so,
Oh,
as,
Dr.
oh, go
Bavakwa,
ahead.
I can
Go ahead.
put the link on the chat if for
Oh,
Doc
yes.
NYC. So if you do want to see the film, I believe there's tickets for virtual screeners beginning November 13th. And then I'll be out in New York City uh for the premiere on the 16th. So any fellow Chamorros out there or people from Guam that want to see the film, I'll be there in person. Uh and afterwards there will be a Q&A. So the link is I just sent the link. Yeah, I hope to connect with everyone out there as well.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to put it on, I'll post it so people can see it. All right. Again, and we've got, oh, there, now we've got more Bibas. Congrats, congrats. Can't wait to see it. Again. Yeah. And so if you are in New York, again, for those of you who are in my Zoom classes, I will post the information in the chat because if you're in New York, this will be your chance to watch it. You can attend the screening there, but you can also, I think if you sign up, there's a chance that you could also watch it online as well.
You get to see Dr. Bavakwa in all his glory in the film.
Oh, don't look at me. Don't look at me. This is when I didn't have a beard when you filmed
Yeah,
that interview.
that's great.
I want
Yeah.
you to put black bars on my face. And so he'll be in in New York. Wait, you're not going to New York though, right?
I will be there. I will be
Oh,
there.
you will be going to New York. So what's the day again?
The
16th, you
16th is when it premieres, is the New York premiere. And then I believe the 13th is the virtual screener. So if you want to watch it because you can't be in New York and you're in whatever part of the world, hopefully that's an option for you. And then on the 20th is another date for it to play. I don't think there's a panel discussion after, but it will just be there available. So the 16th and the 20th in Doc NYC.
All right, Biba. Now we are out of time, but I want to give you a final chance now. Put for what? Do you have any sort of last message, closing message that you would like to share with everybody, either about filmmaking, about language, about anything sort of at all?
Yeah.
Put for what?
For real quick, I guess my thing is that the best films are the ones when you're making them, you're invested in, right? And so Tomorrow Lost Language isn't. I described it to. We had this conversation, Dr. Bavakwa. Um, this is the beginning of the journey for me to start learning the language, and so this film is also my personal call to action to myself and to my children. Uh, and I think if you're just as passionate like I was passionate enough to learn as much as I could about filmmaking, then there's nothing stopping me from learning the language. And there's nothing stopping any of you from learning the language. I'm in my baby stages still. I tune into the Guam bus and I see the posts, so it's really helpful. And I think just never, it sounds cliche, but don't give up, don't take so much of the criticism in because then if you let that all affect you, then you'll never make the film. And the biggest fear that I had in making this film was the amount of criticism that would come with it. But now I embrace that because it means that I'm having conversations with people that are passionate on both sides. And so and that's what filmmaking should be, and the films we make and the stories we tell. We should be having conversations and even just like today. So thank you, Dr. Bavakwa, for having me on, and thank you for even being a big part of the film. And honestly, I thought you were part of Firelight because it was even credited that the a part of and apart from was from you. And so I that's why I was like, oh, I know Dr. Bavakwa. Let me reach out to him. But it was all because of what you said in the past, and it's kind of like full circle. And it's just amazing that you and I were able to connect through this project. And we have plans. I know I don't know if it's okay for me to share, but we have plans to make some films in Chamorro together because I feel like maybe that's the next step. Now we got to start making Chamorro more mainstream, and
Again,
that will help perpetuate the language in my way and your way.
again, just do it in Chamorro. That's what I say. Just more ways that people hear and see that the language doesn't just belong with your nana, doesn't just belong in church, doesn't just belong on Sunday mornings when your parents or grandparents are trying to wake you up to get you out in the yard to bush cut,
Yeah.
but that the language can go wherever we go and wherever our imaginations go. That's what I believe in.
And we're on the same page together. So I'm looking
Biba.
forward to 2025.
Yeah, de. Si Zeus Masi. Si Zeus Masi Brian and si Zeus Masi nu Hamzu todos. Put in kungok zanine ega estina episode Fanachu esti Fanakpo. Jos esta kimana liihit